Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about 1776 versus 1619. Economist Steve Moore joins me, and patriotic education versus freshman wokeness training you won't believe. And of course, I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth.
To America Can We Talk, and to today's First Five, I'm Debbie Georgatos. I wanted to do an opening five today just to briefly say I'm so grateful that President Trump has taken such strong executive action, his executive order establishing the 1776 Commission. And it is designed in great part to combat the 1619 Project, which has been a project by the New York Times to essentially argue that all of America, our whole understanding of the concept of America, the identity of America, what the country means and is all about, the New York Times is trying to argue we should shift our thought away from the beautiful ideas of the founders, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the Constitution, that all of that's be cast aside, and all we should really be focusing on was 1619, the year that the first slaves from Africa came to America, and the entire shift pushed by the New York Times project, the 1619 Project, is to just have a laser focus on race, racial division. It is intended to create racial suspicion, hatred, and ultimately to divide society. There is nothing noble, right, or good about it. The idea of it is to plant the seed and perpetrate the idea that across America, the only identity of our country really is racist, that there was a country racist from the founding, and it just is designed in this election cycle moving forward to keep America racially divided. We've talked a great deal on this show about the 1619 Project, various things they put out that weren't true. I'm not going to go into them right now, but later in the show I'm going to come back to this because I'll close out the first five by saying this. I really think that the contrast between President Trump's 1776 Commission to restore the understanding of America, to replace in the minds of American students and the American people, to bring back the love of America, the reverence for the unique ideas that created America, that picture of America versus what the New York Times is trying to do in the 1619 Project, it's really kind of a metaphor for the elections of 2020. Are we going to all remember what America really is, or are we all going to dissolve into further racial tension and division and hatred and ultimately surrender our very country in order to appease those trying to push that project? And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five. So I mentioned before we started the show, we have Steve Moore joining us. Steve Moore is on the phone today. He's been on the show many times. Most people of my listeners will recognize his name. He's an economist, a previous very close advisor of President Trump, helping him come up with his plan for America, his economic plan. He has went with the Wall Street Journal, the Heritage Foundation. He's currently on leave as an economist from the Heritage Foundation to work on the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. I even love the name, Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And they, as I've mentioned to you in the past, they put out a great email. You ought to get on their list if you're not. Get on their email and understand what they're trying to do and spreading a little bit of truth about where we are in this country, contrasted with what you read in the media all the time. So I believe we have Steve Moore on the phone.
You do. Good to be with you. For having me.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for joining us. Well, I got to tell you, I really, really commend you on this Unleash Prosperity thing. It's just a great, I noticed on issue 119, this is dated, yeah, it's wonderful. So,
well, thank you. And if people want to get it, it's free. All you have to do is just go to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity website and just click a button and send us your email. We'll send it out every morning. And, we've gotten great response. Newt Gingrich and a lot of the members of Congress and governors are using it, and even a lot of my friends at the White House are finding it to be a really good, useful guide. You can read it in 5 or 10 minutes. It's just something that comes out really, just really short items that will kind of make your eyes burst out of your head when you see the stupid things liberals are doing.
Well, that's for sure. Well, there are a bunch of great things in this issue, but I want to talk about one. We've talked about this in the past. but you have something in the recent issue of Unleashed Prosperity. It was entitled COVID Deaths Resume Decline, and of course, the media pays no attention. Honestly, and I will tell you, I'm sure you've noticed this too, Steve, you're out in public sometime and it seems like you see a lot of people trying to get back to normal, feeling pretty healthy, just kind of moving forward in life, and you have other people huddled in fear, and it kind of depends what they read. And I think that there are not enough Americans recognizing how well we're doing with COVID. So would you give a little bit of update about how well we're doing in this country with COVID?
Well, this is a national scandal, really, that the media and the government is not reporting on the amazing news. I mean, if you turn on the TV news, or you listen to the radio, or look at the newspapers, you'd think we've got a plague that's descended upon us that is not going away. And in fact, we've seen dramatic reductions in death rates. We've seen dramatic reductions in hospitalizations. Even the percentage of people that are testing positive is going down, down, down. And yet most people on the street think it's getting worse, not better. And that's because the media and the government are just not giving people the real data. There is no reason. You and I talked about this the last time I was on. It's one of the greatest scandals of all time is that our schools are closed. That is outrageous. Kids under the age of 25 do not get sick from coronavirus, and they certainly don't die. Your child is more likely to die from a bolt of lightning than from coronavirus, unless they have other health problems. But for healthy children not to be in schools, I find it to be reprehensible. This is now almost a full year that children are going without schooling, and that does real damage to their economic and their educational and social development.
Absolutely does. I'm glad you mentioned the schooling. We had a doctor from Texas on the show last week, Dr. Richard Bartlett, running through a great deal of data, basically making the same argument. There's no reason kids shouldn't be in school. And yet we have Americans paralyzed by fear. And the detriment to the kids is not just that they miss learning the multiplication tables or something like that. It's far more serious. It is a shutting down of social life, as normal engagement. For many kids, it's just it's a cutting off from normal life.
It is. And I was just reading some statistics about third grade reading. Third grade, aptitude for reading, and the numbers are just so depressing. Only half of kids in the United States are at grade level on reading. But the point that this study makes, which is really important, is that if you miss a year of school, you're behind, and you can't. It's hard to catch up when you lose that. And they were showing that if you're able to read at third grade, that affects your by the time you're a teenager, and it even is correlated with your earnings when you graduate from school. So having these kids at home and online learning just isn't working for the majority of kids. It works for some kids, but the majority of them it doesn't. And so the fact is we should be opening up our economy. That's what our Committee on Unleashed Prosperity has been about, is we got to get things up and running, get people back to work, get businesses back on their feet. And we're doing that, by the way. There's another thing that the media isn't reporting on. We've created 10.5 million jobs in the last 4 months. 10.5 million jobs. That's by far the biggest record job gain. Now, we lost 20 million during the spring when we shut down the economy, but nobody thought we'd see this snapback. And it's because of Donald Trump's policies, and that's why nobody in the media wants to report on this. And by the way, if you want coronavirus to go away, then just vote for Joe Biden, because the day after he's elected president, I guarantee you, they'll say, coronavirus, what's that? We never heard of coronavirus.
Oh, you're right. That'll be last year's news. Coronavirus is gone. Well, you kind of jumped out of my next topic, which was there were some great economic numbers, which again, you have to try to find them in the news. But what are the policies? What is Trump doing in the midst of this coronavirus mess to help bring the economy back? Because he definitely is. What's he been doing that's accomplished this?
Well, first of all, the big news that came out last week that should have really been underneath the headline about the better, improving news on coronavirus. The second, lead item should have been the fact that we got the Census Bureau reported on incomes and poverty levels of American families. And that's the gold standard of reports that comes out every year. And they found the biggest gains in incomes in like 30 years. I mean, median household income, that's the people exactly in the middle of the income. I'm not talking about rich people. I'm talking about the exact middle class. their incomes in 3 years under Donald Trump has gone up by over $6,500. The average family gained more income in 3 years under Trump than 8 years under Obama's policies. So naturally, the Democrats want to go back to Obama's policies. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's exactly what they want to do.
Well, those are the numbers. I actually have a report in front of me, and you're very good at speaking of numbers so quickly and fluidly. I have them in front of me, and I probably won't do as nearly as persuasive a job, but it's an astonishing thing to think about. The party on the left that says they care so much about the poor, so much about minorities, but when you have great numbers that should be making people realize, oh my gosh, this is really great. We can't even celebrate them. And you talk about the poverty rate lower. I'm reading from a different piece that you were quoting them, but poverty rate in the United States in 2019 lower than have been at any time since they started measuring it.
Ever, yeah. You know, it goes back to the official statistics go back to 1959, but obviously before that we had higher poverty than we do have today. So the lowest poverty rate ever in the United States. That's an amazing thing to think about. And by the way, that poverty rate has gone down for Hispanics, blacks, Asians, women, whatever group you want to talk about. It's all good. Now, of course, 2020, this is all pre-coronavirus. But what it does prove is, hey, if you want a roaring economy, cut taxes, reduce regulation, promote American energy, get better trade deals to bring jobs back to the United States. Trump did all those things. And it's been, and the media is yawning, oh, nothing really happened. What are they talking about? This was an incredible boom. And now we got Trump getting the economy back at a pace that nobody thought was possible, even me, and I'm a big optimist. I never thought we'd be where we are today. And it's because Trump is continuing to promote pro-business policies. And that's the difference. I mean, this election is about somebody who's been in politics for, 40 or 50 years, and somebody who's been in business for 40 or 50 years. Ladies and gentlemen, who do you think can handle the economy better? Come on.
Very good point. I want to jump into something that's been a lot in the news and a lot of noise made by the left about this. And the argument is that President Trump is somehow he's surreptitiously or he's moving toward cutting Medicare, cutting Social Security. He's got a scheme going on that there was a temporary change made this year to help because of COVID. But the plan really is he's going to cut everything. Could you please set the record straight?
Well, this was my proposal, actually, so I take it personally. I mean, we developed policy for Trump that would give payroll tax relief for every single worker working in America and every small business, and that would have been hugely beneficial for the economy. And Nancy Pelosi said, no, I don't want to do that. That's not going to help. And then we went back, 8 or 9 years ago when Obama was president. He cut the payroll tax. And back then, she said it's the best thing we can possibly do for working-class Americans. And now she's saying she doesn't want to do it because she doesn't want to help the economy. I mean, that's an important thing to realize. Democrats are trying to do everything they can to sabotage the economy so that they can take over and then take credit for, supposedly resurrecting it. And, we ought to cut the payroll tax. And this is such a fallacious argument. Everyone knows that Donald Trump ran on not touching Social Security and Medicare. He is not going to, what's the old, the ads the Democrats used to run of, Granny in the
wheelchair.
Wheelchair over the cliff.
Yep.
That isn't going to happen. Trump is not going to cut these programs. I don't care how many times the Democrats say it.
Absolutely true. And it is the craziest thing to argue this president, whose base, those voters, the recipients, they're people who are more traditionally conservative. They're his voters. It's just absurd. I want to ask you, though, this is kind of back to where we are in the economy and COVID and how much governors are shutting things down. If you take these three big states I want to mention, California, Illinois, and New York, and they're slow rolling coming out of the COVID restrictions, slow rolling, open the economy. Don't those three states together, aren't they just doing, can you calibrate what is the damage they're doing to the overall economic numbers by their slow rolling, coming back to life?
Well, these blue states, are the ones, the blue states being the states with Democratic governors and Democratic legislatures, those are the states that have the worst economies, right? So just look at those numbers. The highest unemployment rates are in California, in New York, in New Jersey, in Connecticut, in Massachusetts. Now, Massachusetts has a Republican governor, but he's a rhino. He's a liberal Republican. So I don't count him as a Republican.
Yeah.
But all of the blue states are getting crushed. They're getting crushed, their economy. And now they want the federal government, they want states like Texas and Tennessee and Georgia and Arizona and Idaho and Utah to pay for their bills. And people in Texas and Tennessee and Utah should say, hell no. If you've got these big, fat government programs in Illinois and California and New Jersey and New York, and you want to lock down your economy, you're welcome to do it, but don't come to Washington and cry for more money. So that's a big deal right now, by the way, because as we speak, Nancy Pelosi is trying to get a new budget deal that would include a $500 billion blue state bailout. And I hope, people in Texas, tell their congressmen and senators, hell no. It's not fair for people in Texas to pay for the, incompetent leadership in New York and Illinois.
I could not agree more, and I would love to have more Republicans speaking up about this, just the unfairness of it, because what Nancy Pelosi is really trying to do is say all of America should pay for bad economic policy that Democrats embrace. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's worse than that, because we would be, there's a word, like when you have a spoiled child that misbehaves, it's called enabling. And you never want to enable bad behavior, right? And that's, if we give a bailout to California, New York, and New Jersey, and Illinois, we're just enabling them. We're enabling the governors to keep their economies shut down and their stores and businesses shut down and their workers in unemployment lines. Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to enable bad behavior. And, of course, that's why Nancy Pelosi of California and Chuck Schumer, of course, from New York, want the bailout money for their states.
Yeah. And the other thing it enables, and I think we've talked about this in the past, but it enables voters in that state, in those big blue states, to never connect dots. If they keep,
they're going to pay it back.
Yeah,
they're never going to pay that money back. Of course they won't.
Yeah, but there's, like California voters, because I know some of them, I've talked about, that it works, everything's working fine here. You can do everything our state does. The sun still comes up in the morning, I still go to work. I mean, they never see a consequence for the policies they back. And if Washington bails out, those voters still never figure out. They don't connect the dots. They don't connect the dots between the policies they vote for and what's happening to their states.
Well, it's important. This is all important because, look, this is a big election we have coming up. And basically the Democrats are saying, hey, let's have the blue state policies for the whole country. And we're saying, no, let's have the red state policies for the rest of the country. And now we say, okay, well, which works better, red state policies or blue state policies? And then you look at all the blue states, they have the highest death rates from coronavirus. They have the highest crime rates. They have the most riots. And they are the ones with the economies that have crumbled. And the red states are actually doing pretty well. And so why would we want to make America look more like New York and Illinois and New Jersey? I mean, that's just stupid, right? We want to make America follow the policies that actually work, and those are the states of, I know that, Texas doesn't always get it right, but it does it pretty well. You have no income tax, and you have low taxes and low regulation, and the same thing with Florida, and same thing with Georgia, and Utah. We rate Utah as the state with the best economic policies. Texas is number 4 on our list, but those states do it right, and they create all the jobs. Texas and Tennessee and Arizona and Florida are bringing in about 3,000 people every day from other blue states. So why are people leaving blue states if blue state policies work so well?
It's a very good question indeed. This organization you're working with now, Committee to Unleash Prosperity, when you first got going, I thought it was entirely focused on the dealing with COVID and trying to convince people that we needed to open the economies, and we couldn't keep it. But you cover so many great issues in this. One of them you uncovered. Oh, I love it. One of them you uncovered, which I had not focused on, but you're taking a look at Joe Biden, our Democrat presidential candidate, and you had his talking about more money he's going to spend. You're reviewing some of the money he wants to spend, but you exposed them. I had not heard about this. People always wonder, are the Democrats ever going to find a program they don't like? And he actually found one. The Biden economic plan proposes to end the federally funded Opportunity Scholarship Program in Washington. Can you talk about that?
It makes me sick, actually. I'm sick about this because I live in Washington, D.C., and I've seen the thousands and thousands of Black and Hispanic and low-income parents who've benefited from this program. It's a voucher program so that kids can get out of the miserable, and dangerous government-run schools in that city and go to schools that work, whether the Catholic schools or private schools or Jewish schools or Montessori schools or home schools. And it's worked. The program's worked so well. And, to see these Black, oftentimes single mothers, they're so proud of their kids when they graduate from these schools, and many of them go on to college. It's been an amazing thing. And so we do this. It costs about $20 million a year for something like 2,000 or 3,000 kids a year. That's the program that Joe Biden wants to get rid of. The one program that actually works and is helping Black parents, and they're calling, by the way, Biden is calling Donald Trump a racist. Trump loves this program. He wants Black kids and Black families to succeed. And this is just further evidence that all the Democrats care about is the teachers' unions. That's all they care about. They don't care about kids. They don't care about minorities. They don't care about the middle class. They just care about power. They care about trial lawyers and teachers' unions and people who give them money. And so, let's not be naive and think, oh, liberals, they really care. The Democrats care about people and working class people. No, they don't. They just care about the people who give them money. And that's why they're putting the teachers' unions ahead of these, these very poor minority parents and kids. And I'm sickened by it. I think it's disgusting.
Oh, I'm sickened by it too. It's a great word. It is so deeply upsetting, and especially because there's been such a great movement in our country to encourage families and individuals to support school choice so that more kids have figured out a way they can get a great public school education. And yet this fabulous idea, this Opportunity Scholarship Program, which you say it's real life, on the ground success, real life families, and you can see the track record. And I think, Steve, our problem is we just aren't as good, I don't know what the right word is for our side, not as good marketers or exploiters of ideas, because if the roles are reversed and the conservatives were going to be cutting funding to a great program like this, you would have racist in the headline of every story about it.
Of course. It's called the double standard. And what's the old saying? If it weren't for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. And, I'm just so upset about this. But I have to go run and pick up my kid from school, speaking of schooling. So it's been just fabulous to be with you. And, I can't wait to talk to you after the election when Donald Trump wins a smashing victory, because I really think he is. The American people see what hypocrites the liberals are, and we don't want to make America look like New York City or, what's happening
Portland.
in Minnesota or these other states. All right. Well, have a great one. Thank you for having me.
Great talking to you. Thank you, sir. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, I tell you, folks, you should get these daily emails. They're full of gems like this. That was Steve Moore, fabulous economist, thinker, writer, and he actually, the reason I love having him on, he can take pretty complex ideas and make them sound really simple. But his Unleash Prosperity organization and newsletter, putting out all sorts of arguments and just facts and data. As I started to tell you, one of the main reasons it got going was to try to help America think about the idea that we had this massive injury to our economy, just massive hit to our economy from the shutdown from COVID. And it was trying to make the argument that as we move forward, we have to take into consideration in making policy going forward, not just all of the data just coming from the medical community, but policy surrounding how we deal with COVID should involve input from economists, from people who are aware of family dynamics, family counselors, social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists. We should be looking at the whole picture of America before we do such a massive shutdown again. But they have, Unleash Prosperity has really evolved into a great, really just an excellent source of information on COVID and on how, as the numbers get better and the hospitalization rate goes down and the death rate goes down, everything's going great in COVID. But you wouldn't know it if you just read mainstream media. You would think we were still in the middle of the bubonic plague. I want to go back in this show today and go back to the topic I started with. I was kind of 1776 versus 1619. I think it's important to understand how committed the left is to convincing America that this country is so deeply, horribly racist, and what they intend to do with that. I want to tie in something I mentioned a couple days ago on this show, that I have this Economist friend. He's a PhD in economics, and he's been a professor. He lectures over the world. This is not Steve Moore, who's also a friend, but this is another economist. And he has a piece out that he wrote called The New American Socialist Movement. The New American Socialist Movement. And I want to try to tie some kind of ideological ideas together and under the umbrella of talking about 1776, which is the founding of America, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and what the American left has, through the New York Times and other outlets, been pushing as a way to think about America. And this is the 1619 Project. And I will tell you, as a little aside, I talked to a very liberal friend of mine who's, college educated, 2 master's degrees, brilliant, person, educationally, intellectually. But when I was pointing out the 1619 Project, and she's a huge leftist, huge, very, very far left. I was talking about the 1619 Project at the New York Times, and she said, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's silly. Who would believe that? And I kind of felt good after I talked to her, because I realized what the 1619 Project is intended to do is shift the attention of the American people away from the founding ideas of America, away from the beauty of the ideas in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. We're endowed by our Creator with the rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that we have rights simply because we were born. That's what it means, endowed by our Creator. Those beautiful ideas that were in the Declaration of Independence. And then we move forward after we had to have a little war with England, the Revolutionary War, got around to the Constitution. That document is intended to enable, to strengthen, to give structure to what the promises were that we started out the Declaration of Independence with. This is the whole idea of America. This is the idea of America rarely taught in public schools anymore. This is the idea of America that matters so much, that created America's abundance, prosperity, civil society, ordered liberty, America, the country that everyone wanted to come to, and still everyone impoverished in this world wants to come to. They all want to come to America. So you have the real America, the 1776 America, and you have the America the left, the New York Times is pushing out through their 1619 Project, which they define to say it is the America that is all about focusing in on the first time slave ships arrived on the shores of what is now America from Africa, and the first time the slave ships came, that was the beginning of America. And the entire premise of the 1619 Project that the New York Times launched is to tilt America's attention away from the extraordinary greatness of the ideas of the founding of 1776 and divert your attention over to no, America's not great, the country's not great, the founding ideas aren't great, the Declaration isn't great, the Constitution is great. It is a message to America. All you should be thinking about, all you should focus on is skin color. That's all. And America, the idea of the 1619 Project is to say America is a deeply horrible, evil, racist country, a country that has a horrible, evil, racist history. And there is institutional racism. There is systemic racism. There's racism under every rock. It is intended to divide America, to convince Americans to hate each other, to see each other in racial terms. It is intended to destroy the very fabric of the American culture. It is intended to make us hate each other. It is intended not to solve and smooth and move forward and find solutions for our problems. It is intended to divide America. So we can't unite around anything good and noble. It's intended to destroy America. I cannot urge you strongly enough to understand the entire purpose of the 1619 Project, still taught, now being taught in public schools around this country, is to shift the learning, shift the teaching, shift what kids learn about America away from these just noble, glorious ideas of the founding and into America as a place to hate. And this, even though 1619 Project came along only a few years ago and kind of gave some glue to these leftist ideas. It is really part of what the leftist mission has been in our country for decades. And that's how I want to tie in this discussion to the socialist movement in this country. As I mentioned in other shows, in 1920s, when communists came to America, and they were working very hard to turn America away from the abundance and prosperity and goodness that come from freedom and free markets and capitalism and entrepreneurship. And the communists realized, coming to America, why would Americans ever want to abandon this and all the greatness they're seeing, when what we're trying to convince them of is Marxism and socialism, which takes away everything about the right of property and private property ownership, takes away entrepreneurship, takes away the link between hard work and reward, takes away prosperity. The communists realized they couldn't convince America to do that. They could not convince America to do that. And so they decided and figured out what they had to do instead of trying to sell the pure economic idea of socialism, Marxism, communism. Instead, they would use the issue of race to divide America. They would use the issue of race and try to convince Americans of the completely baseless idea that freedom, free markets, entrepreneurship, and capitalism are inherently racist. It was one of the decisions that the Communist Party came to. What they did over the decades, you can read about this. They worked to develop into the mindset of the American people that freedom, free markets, entrepreneurship were inherently racist ideas. And that somehow we, the communists, we, the Marxists, we, the socialists, we're going to fix everything. We're going to crush those evil people who believe in freedom. We're going to bring you a better system. Never mind, there's never been a country in the world that survived under it, never been a country in the world that prospered and lifted people up under Marxism and communism. You have Venezuela, where people are breaking into zoos to eat zoo animals because they're starving to death. You have Cuba, you have North Vietnam, you have North Korea, you have China, you have these places in the world. Nobody tries to go there on vacation. No one thinks, oh, I would love to go spend vacation, in North Korea. That sounds good. No one does this. People flee the tyranny that's inherent in Marxism, in socialism, in communism. People flee it. But because the people who love these ideas want to push them in America, they have latched onto race as the idea that they can use to convince people to merge, to move away from freedom and to go along with socialism. And this is what AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the four, squad members or first-term members of Congress in Washington, avowed Democrat socialists. This is what Bernie Sanders does. This is what all leftists do. They can't argue the rightness and the fairness of communism, Marxism, and socialism because they're all hideously unfair. So they turn your attention and say they want to bring you and rescue you from racism, from the evils of America, the horrible country America is. They divert your attention from the ugliness of the economic ideas and try to sell you those ideas based on accusations of racism, unjustified. And they try to sell you with, don't worry, vote for us, we'll make everything free. You'll all be poor, and no one will have private property, and no one will have their freedom anymore, but hey, you know what? At least it'll all be equal. And I'm getting around to saying this. I think this whole juxtaposition in 2020 is a great thing. The more I think about it, 1776 embodies the ideas of America. Yes, America wasn't perfect. Everyone knows America wasn't perfect. We founded our country. They had to write into the Constitution. To get the country created, they had to write into the Constitution that slavery existed. They had to write it in and count slaves as 3/5 of a person, which I'll get to in a moment, why that was actually not the evil thing most people thought it was. And and women didn't have the right to vote. America wasn't perfect when founded, not perfect when the Constitution was written, but the ideas of the Declaration, they are the best ideas that ever founded a country. The ideas that say you have rights from God because you were born, the right to live in life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that all men are created equal. When the founders got around to creating the Constitution, what they had to do to get the southern states that were slaveholding to come along was the southern states wanted to have the slaves counted as full citizens, just as the free people were. And the northern people are saying they don't, no, you know what? You're owning them as slaves. You can't, this is, what you're doing is wrong. So they went to the compromise of 3/5. The 3/5 compromise was not about diminishing the value of black lives. It was about punishing slaveholders. You got to grasp this. The 3/5 argument was not about saying a black American who was a slave at that time only had the worth of 3/5 of a person. It was to punish the slaveholders, to give them less power in the southern states, to not allow them to have the full power in their population count for their state that would include a full count of people who are slaves, because those people don't have the rights that they should have had because they were slaves. It was a punishing slaveholders, diminishing the power of the slaveholders. So there, on the founding of our country, not perfect, but the ideas were perfect, and we move forward as a country, making ourselves better and better and better. But where we sit in 2020, we have what the left stands for, and I'm including Biden and the whole ilk on the American left, stands for the 1619 Project, fixated on race, never wanting to find solutions. They're never proposing solutions. They're simply attacking the idea of America. They are going along with the same Communist Party attack that they used to try to bring America around to rejecting freedom and going from Marxism. It's the same thing Biden and the left are doing today. The 1619 Project is using race as a vehicle to batter, clobber, and try to destroy the idea of America, to divert your attention from the greatness of the ideas of America. So and the conservative idea of 1776 is supporting the ideas of America's founding. And this is why I love so much that President Trump has he's actually created a commission, a 1776 commission. A little bit of the language he uses, these were just great language he talked about and why he created the 1619 Project. The narratives about America being pushed by the far left and being chanted in the streets bear a striking resemblance to the anti-American propaganda of our adversaries. Trump saying this in his remarks at the White House Conference on American History at the National Archives. He described the 1619 Project, the New York Times 1619 Project, a collection of essays that cast America as an irredeemably racist empire built solely to oppress minorities, as an ideological poison, an ideological prison. This is what the left tries to say about America. And President Trump, God bless that man, he always fights. He sees what the left has done. He sees what they've done in our schools. He sees what the 1619 Project is attempting to continue to do. He sees the Marxist movement using race to try to inspire people to hate America. And he's saying, no, we're going to restore love of America. The 1776 Commission is designed, aimed at promoting, in his terms, patriotic education. It's never right for patriotic education to mean to declare that everything in America is perfect, that nothing was ever wrong with anything that America ever did. That's not the point of this beautiful idea, the 1776 Project. The idea is to prop up the ideas that founded America, their greatness, their eternal strength, the ideas that could make any nation better and great. Make sure American youth understand that's what America is. Yes, we had slavery and it was wrong, and we fought a war and ended it. And yes, we had segregation brought to you by the Democrat Party, and we had segregation and Jim Crow laws and the Ku Klux Klan, all products of the left in this country, all products of the Democrat Party. And Trump is saying, you know what? We're not going to let those evils define what America is. America has done a beautiful job moving forward. America will always continue to move toward being a better and better nation, a better and more perfect union. We'll continue to move forward. But he's getting at, which is a brilliant thing he's doing, he is trying to fight back against the efforts of the 1619 Project and the radical left in this country to destroy love of America. That's what they're trying to do, what the left's trying to do, what the New York Times and the 1619 Project are trying to do, destroy love of America and have all Americans just decide that America is an irredeemably racist nation, a nation that must be hated and torn down and taken apart, which is exactly what the Marxist communist movement in this country decided decades ago, 100 years ago. They had to use race to divide us. And President Trump is saying, not doing that to this country. We're going to restore love of America. We'll be truthful about our history, accurate about our history, but we're going to stand up for the ideas of America. The idea, my very fine friends, if any of you hear people saying this, and I read people saying it, that capitalism is inherently racist, is beyond idiotic. It's the most noble, fairest system ever to bless this earth. Capitalism, freedom, entrepreneurship have lifted up more people on this planet than any other idea ever has. Socialism, Marxism, communism have driven more people into misery and ruin than any other idea on this planet. So I want to commend, and the reason I'll wrap up the show by saying this. President Trump is doing a noble, important, huge thing in stepping up and saying, we're going to publicly not just continue to deny the lies of the left, the attacks on America. It's not enough just to point out the left lies about America. We're going to say what's true about America, what's true about this great and noble country. He is standing up for the ideas of America. He is standing up against the lies of the left. And this is why when people, I hear some people say, well, I know President Trump does some good things, but, I don't like he said this one time, he did this one time. People, President Trump fights for what this country is. And fights against, he takes slings, arrows, insults, obnoxious attacks, and he stands up for what America is. I'll remind you in closing, there was this great statement one time, President Lincoln, during the Civil War in Washington, was approached, this is during the war going on, approached by some of his senior people saying, you know what, you got to get rid of this Ulysses S. Grant guy. I mean, Ulysses S. Grant, he drinks too much. He's apparently, kind of bawdy, very foul-mouthed. He was not, your Southern gentleman. He was drank too much, very, very rough language. And so these advisors came to Lincoln and said, you got to get rid of him. I mean, he behaves badly. And President Lincoln said, I cannot spare him. He fights. This is where we are, people. In this time, in this country, we have a president standing up against this impending Marxist overthrow of our country, standing up against a radical left, enabling, allowing, perpetuating the leftist attack on America. And you have President Trump, and frankly, not too many other people in the Congress or Senate standing up for this country day after day. And this is the reason I think millions of Americans can see what I'm saying. Millions of Americans are right with him. And this is why, unless there's massive voter fraud, why President Trump will win re-election in a landslide. I'll tell you, closing out today before I get to my why it matters to you. So you likely know I'm hosting a conference in Dallas. It is this coming Saturday, September 26th. I am taking tomorrow off from the show because it's just a tiny bit busy right now, wrapping up everything we have to do to be ready for this conference. The conference is called American Women and American Freedom. American Women + American Freedom. You can find it online, AmericanWomenAmericanFreedom.com. It's going to be a fabulous conference, but I got to spend some time the next few days making sure we have everything lined up for a great conference. So I'll be back to talk with you on Monday. We're back on Monday for our regular show. I will fill you in on all sorts of great things, and we're expecting a great conference. Katie Hopkins, Dr. Simone Gold, just a brilliant slate of speakers. It's going to be a great, great conference. So with that, my very fine friends, I'll turn and tell you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. We started today with 1776 versus 1619. And those are symbolic of what I told you. This is a 1776 commission by President Trump and the 1619 project, the anti-American project by the New York Times, which is also known as We Hate America and You Should Too. So President Trump understands an American future that springs from the foundation of 1776, rightly understood, is radically better than an American future that springs from the 1619 Project. And again, 1619 Project is basically summarized as, we hate America and you should too. The ideals of the Declaration of Independence, they unite, they do not divide. They offer inspiration and aspiration for individuals and the country, not hatred. Patriotic education allows generational progress and improvement under ideals. Freshman, I didn't even get to this, freshman wokeness classes. I'll get to this next week. A friend of mine's son is off freshman year in college, and he sent home what he was given to learn about in his very first freshman survey. You would about cry. I'll share with you next week. Freshman wokeness training is trendy, political correctness, no moral principles, no meaningful ideals. It matters if we teach children to love or hate America. Therefore, it matters what we teach children about America. And that, my very fine friends, is my show for today. I love you to subscribe for my newsletter. You go to americacanwetalk.org. On the homepage, hit subscribe, get a weekly email. Love also if you would donate to support this show. This show is supported entirely by listeners like you. I would love your financial support, a one-time donation or recurring donation, again, on our homepage, americacanwetalk.org. You can hit donate, make a donation. I can't tell you how much I'd appreciate that, how much I need that. So love your support in that. And above all else, please tune in every Monday through Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time to America Can We Talk, where I always talk truth about America because America matters. And I will talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.